Cushman thing to read off.
Yeah. Well, let's do. Okay. Morning, everybody, and welcome to Talking Niagara. It's Thursday, July the 3rd.
July the 3rd. Oh.
And I wrote May the 3rd. Why did I do that? Thursday, July the 3rd. There we go. Welcome to the show, everybody. So, just really putting this one up first. The criminal case against Mike Strange is going to be returning to court this month. Just so that people are aware, there's obviously a lot of incidents on this one, a lot of stuff that's been going through the press about it, and I'm sure we'll get more as the month proceeds.
Well, he's asked for another delay, I guess, and which I guess is this normal? Like you're the legal guy?
Well, no. Typically, you see, I don't do much in criminal court, but typically what you get is a number of what they call speak to hearings, where the prosecution or the defense come into court and they're kind of still organizing their evidence. They're waiting for this and that and the other report to come in, and typically, so long as they don't go over the 36 months, there's a 36-month deadline for
36 months
indictable criminal offences, 18 months for summary criminal offences, right? And this would be an indictable offence. So long as they don't have a delay of 36 months before trial, there is a typical delay to a certain degree.
Is this? I'll put this at is this part of the strategy of the lawyer to kind of take this out of the public mind? Where everybody is kind of enraged about it now and want to know a conclusion to this, it is to the benefit of the accused to push it farther away.
Not really in any, because every time, in a case as high profile as this, every time you get a delay, what you'll end up with is the next time around it's a whole gamut of press again.
Yeah, well, I remember going to the court, and I had a couple of times. Once I was asked to go there just to report back to a friend of mine. I didn't know the people involved or anything else, but a friend of mine did, and he wanted me to go there and find out what had happened. And of course, the thing got deferred, and that was the second time it got deferred.
Yeah.
And when I went for another case, it was deferred.
Yeah.
And then it deferred again, and that was a very simple case.
This incident dates. When's this incident date back to? It's earlier this year. It's May this year, isn't it?
Yeah, it was in May.
Yeah.
May 3rd, I think, or something like, or May 20th. May 20th, maybe.
Actually, the note I've just read it. May 3rd, NRP responded to a 3 a.m. call at Strange's residence, where they found a woman with injuries.
Now, is it necessary that the court is so slow on these things?
Yeah. Well, actually, funnily enough, May to July is not slow. But
legal terms, eh?
not in criminal court terms, no. Probably what will end up happening is they'll set it down for trial, probably September, October time. Right now, I don't know what the court calendar's like, of course.
Well, I like that. Like, what did Dickens call the courts? The circulation process or something he called it, where it just goes winds and winds and winds and winds.
Well, in fact, actually, when you think about it, back in the day of Dickens, there's always an advantage to delay. There was no cases like Jordan back in those days that said that you have to face a summary conviction offence has to be dealt with within 18 months, as do traffic tickets, and that indictable offences have to be done within 36 months.
Yeah, here in Charles Dickens' novel Little Dorrit, the circumlocution office is a satirical representative of the British government specific to the civil service, but he later uses the same term to apply to the legal terms in
the criminal court.
That was in the
I get it. No, I get it.
Bleak House.
I remember reading it. Yeah, I remember reading it a long time ago. Yep. Couldn't have told you what. Thank you for the Bleak House reference, because I couldn't have independently remembered that.
I do, because I remember reading that book, and it's one of his best books.
I've read most of Dickens' novels, but I couldn't remember all of the, I remember a lot of the characters from the novels, but I couldn't tell you which individual stories they necessarily were in.
Yeah, that's where also I get the macabre principle, which I talk about on the show a lot. People getting themselves in debt, and the old macabre principle. You earn £100, you spend 99, result happiness. You earn £100, spend 101, result misery.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, anyway, we have now, as far as Mike Strange is concerned, I don't know if his reputation is usually quite tarnishable, and he's had a few drinking while driving charges and a few other things, but he seems to always be able to be untarnishable. Nothing seems to be to stick too long. But this is quite different, and even if he is found to be innocent in this, or there are extenuating circumstances, his reputation is already tarnished, and it's going to take a long time.
But again, does that mean that suddenly now, if you were to face an election tomorrow, suddenly, he's going to lose? I think he had 14,000 votes at the last election. And right now he would have to lose probably 10,000 to actually not get on council.
Yeah, he's an extraordinarily popular guy. He's a three-time Olympian boxer. He's run across Canada to raise money for cancer children. He's been very good that way. But there's an irresponsible sort of side to him previously, like he's an older man now when he had drinking and driving charges.
That was way back, you mean?
Yeah, I don't know how far back it was. So there's two of them at least. And in any case,
I have no recollection of that. So that obviously tells me that was way before he became councillor.
Well, the first one got a lot of press, but the second one didn't get much at all. As I remember, I can't be quoted on that because I'm not sure of it. But the problem here is his reputation, and I hope it's not being marred for something he didn't do.
Yeah.
To get this resolved,
if he's guilty, fine. If he's not guilty, then don't.
Yeah. And I would also say that the quicker it's resolved, the better. If he comes up innocent, that'll give perhaps the women of the city a little bit of reprieve there, or at least take the sort of take the outrage away. But anyway, we should move on to something that Mike Cushman, Mike Strange.
Well, the whole point is
that Mike.
Yeah, the next one we've got here is about residents are concerned about continued dumping or leaking into the Welland River at Chippawa, and there's been kind of, this is not the first time that we've had some form of milky substance flowing into the river, and of course, our friend Mr. Mike Cushman always says it's too often, right? Too often, too much. And
I'm going to read what he sent us.
Yes, thank you, please.
And it says, subject: urgent environmental concern, industrial wastewater and PCB contamination impacting the Welland River and Lake Ontario body. Copy and paste the following. Dear Minister and respected officials, I am writing to express urgent concern regarding a multi-source environmental public health threat in Niagara Falls, Ontario, involving direct toxic discharges into the Welland River, a vital part of the Great Lakes watershed. For over 3 years, an open investigation has been underway into a stream adjacent to the Niagara Falls Humane Society. This stream, which flows directly into the Welland River, is being fed by 2 industrial pipes connected about 30 companies in the industrial section of Niagara Falls. More than one company is actively discharging pollutants into the stream, but yet no public enforcement action has followed. This issue compounds the long-standing contamination of Lions Creek, which contains dangerous levels of PCBs, a legacy toxin that continues to leach into the Niagara River, or the Welland River, pardon me. These pollutants, combined with frequent overflows and compliance failures at the Stanley Avenue wastewater treatment plant, where treatment effluent killed 60% of the rainbow trout in testing. That's how they test it. They put they expose rainbow trout to the toxins and then determine how many of the trout are killed by the toxins. In this case, 60%, which is a lot.
Yeah, a lot.
Create a toxin chain that flows directly into the Ontario Hydro Canal, ultimately Lake Ontario, a source of drinking water for millions. The cumulative damage cannot be ignored. PCB-laden sediment from Lions Creek, untreated sewage, and nutrient loading during storm events activate industrial pollution from the stream near the Humane Society. 60% fish, mortally and chronic effluent toxicity at the Stanley Avenue wastewater treatment plant. Uncontrolled overdevelopment, further burdening old infrastructure. We are witnessing a slow-moving ecological disaster and a failure of regulatory oversight. Everything that enters the Welland River impacts not only the local ecosystem, but downstream communities, wildlife, and human health throughout the Great Lakes Basin. I respectfully request the following: a public environmental health impact assessment of the Welland River, Lions Creek, Ontario Hydro Canal System, immediate enforcement and remediation orders for the industrial stream pollution, public release of discharge, overflow, and toxicity testing data from the Niagara wastewater treatment plants, a development moratorium until infrastructure and environmental safety are addressed, an independent investigation into provincial and regional enforcement failures. This issue has been raised repeatedly, including in CHCH coverage. I added that to your that's a
continuation of what we were talking about with Mike's stuff from last year. We had exactly this about, in the fall of last year, didn't we?
Yes, and just to conclude, This issue has been raised repeatedly, including in CHCH coverage, yet the response has been muted and insufficient. Please treat this as the urgent ecological crisis it is. Sincerely, Mike Cushman. Thank you, Mike. Thank you for your resilience in this matter.
He's talking about things like toxic rainbow sheen with a strong chemical smell, black oily sludge, and possibly machine coolant or lubricant.
Yeah, that's a big possibility. Now, what's supposed to happen to that stuff? It's supposed to go to a separate area. You're supposed to have a separate sewage facility for anything that may drain off toxins. They had to do this at Nanticoke Power Station.
Mm-hmm.
Actually, their drains and everything went directly into the lake when it was discovered that there's a significant amount of things like machining coolant and other industrial chemicals. They had to separate the sewer system, which at a big cost, so that the implant sewer system, anything that went, even if they washed down.
If you washed your hands in the washroom, that would go through the normal sewer system, but spills of chemicals onto the factory floor would go into into a specialized area.
Yeah, into a separate area. Yeah.
And I'm not saying that spills on the factory floor are common, right? Don't get me wrong. I'm just using that as an example.
That's right.
Yeah.
So we have
everything that goes into Lions Creek goes into the Welland River. Everything that goes into the Welland River goes into our Ontario Hydro Canal. Yeah, absolutely. And of course, the Welland River flows both ways. It can, the flow can go back towards the Niagara River as well. So this is not a minor issue. Absolutely. Yeah. Thank you, Mike.
No, it's not. It is. I don't know. It's very frustrating for Mike. I think this is part of the reason why
he's been on this for about a year now. And if I'm over by a year, by a few months, forgive me, but I know it's been going on for quite some time.
I think, probably he's been keeping an eye on that for quite a while.
Yeah.
The response has been regrettable. I don't know why the response time is so low. I appreciate his letter. I would and his efforts in this. I would much rather have someone more than just Lori Lococo kind of pushing for this kind of things. And that's what she did. She did that in the Cyanamid thing. Who was there from city council? She was. Yeah. When it came to the Lions Creek Road thing, she was also spoke on CHCH TV about this.
And Lori Lococo has called for provincial support to get rid of this issue.
Yes. Now, of course, you're dealing.
Mike said 3 years ongoing. Okay, so there we go. 3
years. Yeah.
3 years ongoing. Yeah. So I knew it had been going for some time. I knew we had a full session discussing this last year.
It would take an intensive investigation because there are 30 companies that dump into this, he says. First of all, you're just going to have to just exclude the ones that most likely would not be the ones that dumping and sort of concentrate on those that are more likely.
Well, what bothers me about this, have we got a new company that's moved in there that basically has found that the industrial unit they've moved into doesn't have the capability for normal runoff for these sort of for the byproducts that they produce, and therefore they've been dumping it into the main drains.
What?
That's what. Well, that's what it seems to me as if what you've got is a company that kind of isn't using the right system or deliberately dumping.
Do you know this for sure?
I don't know. No, I don't know anything. I don't know anything. I'm just speculating here. I'm just concerned, right?
Well, some of them might not be. Some of them might not know they've been doing anything wrong.
Yeah,
because
and Mike just points out there's a bus washing company there too, and that's a possibility. You wash off from the buses crap like that.
well, if you're washing underneath, if the buses have diesel and oil discharge, which shouldn't have,
Yeah,
because if they have, their engines are things are not being maintained. If they have fluid leaks like oil pan leaks and transmission oil and all that other stuff are getting more and more rare every day. It used to be.
You would think, yeah.
So that may be part of it. The other industrial processes have to be.
Mike's concern is that the fluid is always flowing.
Yes. Now, where is it coming? Some of it's leaching into the system, possibly when Mike said that. But has anyone actually gone in there and decided which are the most likely culprits?
I'm gonna
like if you have there used to be a printing place in there, right? And there are it's very unlikely that a printing company would have discharges of that kind. No. They may have ink and solvents and stuff like that, but they're usually used up in the printing process and not discharged. So I don't even know if that outfit's there anymore. But
well, there's a lot of
have some kind of industrial process, something that's if you have a machine shop in there or some other kind of manufacturing process that needs coolants, and other type of industrial chemicals. Maybe it's coming from there. I don't know. So
I took a drive, about 2.5 years ago. I took a drive around Don Murray, and it used to be kind of last time I'd been there, which was probably 7 or 8 years prior to that. The place only seemed to have about 3 or 4 plants open. The last time I went round there, as I say, 2.5 years ago, it seemed as if absolutely everything was open. There's dozens of buildings and they're all full. The car parks are all full. Couldn't tell you what any of them do. Well,
that's the point I'm trying to make. Yeah. Now, there's going to be more likely, if you want to really investigate this, if the government really gets its act together, it's going to have to determine what companies are there and what companies are the most likely.
Well, he's got here, there's a printing company, Brunner's Manufacturing, I think, the sludge, the bus cleaning place, and Mancuso Chemical, which I think is a huge culprit. Mancuso Chemical and the bud cleaning place are only places that are open on Sundays.
Yeah, so there's a good place to start.
Yeah. And again, isn't it time for a raid on some of these places?
Well, they have to oblige by whatever environmental rules are in place. Now they are open to inspection. Problem is, the government tells them ahead of time we're coming to inspect.
Yeah, this is where they shouldn't be coming. They should be sending the boys around to inspect without any prior notice.
And also, it might be accidental discharge too.
Well, Mike has said that. Mike talked about that about a year plus ago when he first brought this up. But you see, accidental discharge is on and off, right? For example, the bus company.
Not really. The same sort of chemicals could be coming out of the manufacturing process and being drained off, and the company thinks it's doing what it's supposed to do environmentally because the ministries come in and looked at everything up and checked all the ticky boxes, but they've missed something. Or
I guess that's possible, yeah.
You could do the sinister thing. Well, when the ministry comes, we do it this way. When they go, we do it this other way, which is cheaper.
True. Yeah, that's the more likely. That's the one that bothers me most. But you see, for example, the bus company, you could have a situation whereby the bus cleaning could be in 90% of cases perfectly legitimate, perfectly clean, no byproduct. But then the occasional bus comes through that actually is, has got a mess underneath it.
Less likely these days.
True, but
it might be the solvents by which they clean the buses on the undercarriage.
Yeah,
they may be damaging. They may be using soaps or other things that are not environmentally friendly, but I less suspect the buses than cleaning than I do the industrial processes.
True, I do as well. I think the buses, what you might get is the occasional crap coming through into the system. Occasional.
Yeah, like I said,
the occasional bus that for whatever reason should not pass the inspection, that gets actually washed, and crap comes off of, and yucky crap comes off of it in some manner. Right?
Well, how often are they doing an engine clean on these things?
Yeah, it's got to be rare.
There's another factor there. I mean, where that stuff is coming from would be unmaintained or need to be retained buses, and they would be rarer than anything because
I know it's rare
shops,
yeah,
right. And if they're having leaks, transmission leaks or diesel leaks or oil leaks of some kind,
used to be a day you could follow a bus and you could see the ones that had oil leaks, but not so anymore.
No, I mean all the cars I've had until the last 3 cars basically have always had at a certain time some sort of transmission leak or coolant leak or something of that kind.
And you could follow a vehicle, sometimes a leaking vehicle, down the road, and you can see the drop on a regular interval, right?
And gas leaks and leaky gas tanks, you don't get that too much anymore. They still occur, but much less. So that's why I kind of cross the bus off as maybe the primary culprit here. But it seems to me that the ministry should go in, analyze what the 30 different companies are there, and then shortlist the ones that are more likely to have.
Yeah, there's got to be two. There's got to be only 2 or 3 that produce the right chemical mix.
Well, he's finding PCBs, which wouldn't be incorporated in any of those companies. So he's at that point, he's talking about legacy PCBs leaking into it. The other stuff that's actually coming from the factories, that yet has to be determined. That takes resources.
Yeah.
And I think probably the ministry, their excuse would be, we have to prioritize the worst ones. That's a minor one. We've got worse ones other places. So that has to go down the list. And they'll say, well, it's a minor spill compared to the ones we're working on now. So we'll just have to wait on that one and move on the other bigger ones we have around the province. Probably, I just don't like that kind of attitude. I think it would be a quick investigation to try to figure out who would be most likely the perpetrators, and find out if they're doing it by accident or by design, and then come up with recommendations how to fix it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Mike's working very hard, but he's not getting a whole lot of.
And the big problem here is that I appreciate what Mike is doing, but again,
he's not getting a whole lot of support, is he?
Yeah. Sometimes, well, I was just going to say, one of the problems I see with people who Mike does a lot of work, and there's absolutely a lot of stuff that he does that I think we should pay a lot more attention to than the city does, or the region does, or the province does. But the problem here is when you've got a person who frequently writes, there's a tendency, but unfortunately, whether they're right or wrong, to throw that stuff in the bin.
Yeah, I can see them at the ministry too. So putting it in the bottom of this
that bloody
pile that they have to
game,
investigate.
Yeah.
The ones that get the attention are the ones that are glaring. The ones that attract a lot of press. So my hat's off to CHCH for bringing it up and putting it on their TV news program. We see it. The articles come up once in a while in Niagara Falls Review. We can't really trust the Niagara or count on the Niagara Falls Review, not because they're not good at what they do. It's just because they're too small of a paper nowadays. They got a couple of reporters, and they really don't. And even in my experience with Qantas, they like I said, we had a convention that was full of people from all over the Caribbean.
And nobody came.
So they went over to the Comic-Con, and that helps whoever owns the Comic-Con, but they just disregard this whole convention, international convention, right under their feet.
And there's absolutely no reason they shouldn't have paid attention to both. In fact, they could have sent the same reporter to both.
No, there's resources are limited, and when we've tried to get in contact with them about stuff that Qantas does. They used to have a really good reporter, Paul Forsyth, who paid deep attention to what was happening in and around the town. But he got laid off because he had 3 months less seniority than a guy in Hamilton when they did cutback. So he got cut back, and so some geezer in Hamilton is responsible for reporting on Niagara, and he don't give a hoot. He just takes press releases.
Yeah. Well, in fact, the only other way to have done that would have been to have written an article yourself.
You can't get a hold of them when you go to the whoever runs the paper. If you write them, I have myself and others have, and you're lucky if you're going to get a response, and some colleague of mine pushed them on it, and finally got somebody on the phone say, okay, we'll think about it. Look, we're doing this for the community.
Well,
you've done adequate reporting on this in the past. How come you're not doing it now? And you say, oh well, we'll think about it. And that's because some geezer close to retirement's in Hamilton, and no way he's going to drive down here. No way he's going to complicate his life actually doing journalism.
But again, let's look at our next story. Somebody came for this one. The first Ribstock in Niagara Falls has raised nearly $20,000 for local charities, including Project Share, BGC Niagara, and Pasto Mental Health.
Yeah, well, Ribstock got a lot of attention because the 20-year Father's Day Rib Fest run by the Rotary couldn't maintain itself any longer. They did a really good job for 20 years, but just don't have the resources to continue. So Ribstock took over, and this fellow calls himself Billy Bones, which is a cool name, coming right out of that. What was the story about the pirates and Treasure Island? Treasure Island, yeah. Treasure Island. So Billy Bones was one of the guys from Treasure Island. So he used that name, Billy Bones, which is cool.
And Jay Robitaille is the other one.
Well, that I think is the same guy, isn't it?
Probably, yeah.
Anyway, so whatever. The Ribstock has done the unusual and laudable ability to earn $20,000 for local charities. that is a tough thing to do, selling ribs. It's a very hard process to earn money in any of these events. In the first, like we see that
a lot of this has got to be
Rotary is having more and more of a tough time. Now Ribstock makes $20,000. That's incredible. That's an incredible accomplishment.
But there isn't a lot of that for entry into the site.
But the whole object of the thing is to make money for a charity, and someone who makes $20,000 for a local charity on an event like that, have to tip your cap to them, because that's a tough thing. I think some of the stuff that Stanford Fire Department, the volunteer firefighters do, they may work all weekend or a long weekend and have a plus of about $5,000.
Yeah.
And this person's got $20,000. So that is,
they're looking for music. They're looking for musical talent for next year's lineup.
Yeah. So the whole, it's going to be, and next year it's going to be on Father's Day again.
Yeah.
So he's going to take that over, and hats off to him. He's really got a really good organization there to be able to do that, to be able to take over where Rotary couldn't no longer carry on. And I don't know why that is. Probably because he had a more devoted staff, and he's a business.
I don't know. Sometimes it's not about the event. It's not that Rotary were doing anything wrong. It's just that sometimes, and I'm not trying to put this in any negative way, same old just doesn't cut it anymore type thing, right?
Well, it's a problem with volunteers. All these groups are aging, and they get less volunteers.
Oh yeah, I know.
And less resources.
Yeah.
And a lot of the charity outfits like ours and Rotary, like Kiwanis and Rotary and Lions, find the resources are dwindling.
I was talking to a retired lady the other day, and she said she does a lot of like volunteer work for her union. Right. So I don't know what union it was, but she does volunteer work for the union.
Well, she's part of the union, and that's part of the process. So they have a large source of individuals that they can choose by, or who can volunteer.
Yeah,
that's not the same as like the charities that I'm talking about, are charitable service clubs, who find their numbers dwindling all the time.
Yeah,
and disinterest from the public to help too, because
the reason I mentioned the union stuff is that maybe that's a slightly different organization, but it's interesting because often they do run similar type events as part of their for their membership and things like that, don't they?
I don't know. You can. I don't know, because they have an organization and they can bring it to the floor. We need volunteers for such and such.
Yeah.
So they have a bunch of people there that they can choose from, or a lot of people, because this person can do it this year, that next person can do it next year.
Often retired members do it anyway, don't they?
Quite, yeah. You have retired members, you could active members. We ourselves, as a union, we used to sponsor juvenile diabetes.
Yeah.
And we used to go out and try to hit up, try to volunteer and get as much money. I don't know if we're doing that anymore, our union, probably because same reason, we don't have enough manpower.
Yeah.
But because the unions are getting smaller too. In fact, my union is closed up and joined Hamilton. the 1007 no longer exists, who I worked for 25 years. How much did the Rotary Club use to get? I'm not sure how much the Rotary Club made.
I think it was in the 5,000 to 10,000 bracket.
Yeah, so if a guy
something triggered, something was kind of in my mind to say it was in that bracket.
I don't know. It was anyway. This Billy Bones guy with Ribfest did a pretty good job. We'll see if that can be maintained over the years. So, and making $20,000 is an excellent work. It's not easy to make $20,000 in an event like that.
Yeah. Okay, so moving on. Musk melts down over Trump's budget bill because apparently his companies have become, increasingly codependent upon the Trump government, and Trump now is trying to cut.
Well, he should have saw this coming, because it always seemed to me strange bedfellows here. You have a guy that part of his stick is to say, we have to clean up pollution, and the best way to do it is offer you a really good electric car, which he did, which Tesla's not his company. He bought into it. Yeah. And became the major CEO. So he's got the energy and the smarts to bring a lot of talented people in one place, and they came up with a very good electric car. And this was advertised as a thing which will help pollution, remove CO2 principally, but other pollutants that carbon fuels cause, and the problems they cause. Trump, on the other hand, wants to drill, baby, drill. He wants to. He sees that the United States is behind in the electric car business. All in all, the Chinese are way ahead. Instead of sort of enhancing that, he wants to go back to the combustion engine, which the United States does fairly well. So
yeah, but again, remember Musk's role with the Trump government was under DOGE, the Department of I forget what the G is.
Government efficiency.
Government efficiency. Yeah. Department of Government Efficiency. That's right. Thank you. And so he was basically, the concept was that he would bring his knowledge of industry, business into government and be able to drive greater efficiency within government.
His job was to cut the pork, the pork and all the inefficiencies that he could find. But he went at it hammer and tong and really made a lot of mistakes. And the $1 trillion or $2 trillion, he promised $2 trillion, but at the very best estimates, he may have saved $150 billion, and that is highly disputable anyway, because a lot of the cuts that he's made will probably have to come back. Now, we reported this earlier when he first started coming up with this idea. I think we reported here, or at least I read, about another initiative like this that happened back in the 70s or 80s, where they had an independent body coming up, and it did it with a lot less flair, but came up with all kinds of suggestions where you can cut here and there. Yeah. They themselves didn't do it, but they said, here is a whole bunch of pork and inefficiencies that you can eliminate. It started well, but it just died. See, because every government person or every senator or congressman has interests in the belabored this deep state, basically.
You see, part of the problem that we face with things like government efficiency is that there's a public view out there that basically you need to cut, a whole department. Why do we need this department? We just slice it away, get rid of everybody in that department. But that's not where government savings come from. Government savings and government waste come from typically like the exchange, like our exchange building that happened here in Niagara Falls behind the Lundy's Lane Museum. The exchange building, when it was first touted, was all designed and everything, and the price was tagged at $7 million. Then when they started actually building it, the price was tagged at $10 million. Then 2 years later, the price is tagged at $12 million. And then all said and done, the price is tagged at $17 million. So that's where we get the problem with government efficiency, because you get projects like that, which are essential projects, where they've got people on board who haven't a freaking clue about how to manage projects.
Well, it's not their job to manage projects. Their job is to hire somebody to manage it for them. Yeah. Every government project always goes over, and that's because the contractors can milk it. And they all do.
Contractors milking it that's the problem.
Well, the contractors milk the private industry as well, if they can. They're always looking for a way to extend a job.
Get permitted to milk the private industry, because if you were building that exchange and it were a private project, the original $7 million estimate that would have come in, you'd have had bitching when it went up to 10, and it certainly wouldn't have risen more than 12.
Well, there are so many regulations and things like that. Part of what Doge and the government was trying to do is reduce regulations and to reduce the pork that is sent out, inefficiency. So everyone can look at the government and the bureaucracy and see that there is waste and mismanagement, nepotism, all kinds of other things. But some of these big bureaucracies like to live on their own. They've got lives of their own. And they are resistant, very resistant to any kind of change. And what Doge went in is started cutting and hacking right away, which you would think that everybody was really happy about. But the fact is, how far could they get? They couldn't get anywhere near $1 trillion, not even touch it.
Yeah.
And some of the subsidies, of course, some of the subsidies that the government was against happens to go right to Elon Musk and his companies.
Yeah. And $1 trillion is a lot of money, and it's really rare that you're going to get anywhere near that much.
You could, but you have to have.
It's a lot of goal, but tough.
Yeah. Well, what was happening is they were chopping things like USAID, which makes up a tiny fraction of U.S. expenditures. And then when they tried to go any kind of deeper than that, they ran into problems. They were firing the wrong people and having to hire them back. They were whole sections of the government were let go, and then found out that, well, we need that back again. So the process was not well organized. He only had 130 days to get it up and going.
Yeah.
And he ran into a stone wall, and that stone wall is the government. And basically the Republicans and Democrats, but the Republicans have their eyes wide open. They don't want the cuts happening in their states. Nobody else wants the cuts happening in their states too. That's kind of what we're getting with this big, beautiful bill, the big, ugly disaster that is sort of taking from the poor and giving to the rich. I don't know. That's why this bromance has been collapsing, because Elon Musk's job was to reduce government spending and make things more efficient. What Trump has done with his big, beautiful bill is just inflated everything. So it doesn't matter how much Trump, if Musk cut $1 trillion, Trump's going to spend $2 trillion to cover it.
Yeah.
So you're going in the wrong way.
Yeah.
And his argument was, I'm here to bring down the cost of government because this is a country that's going broke. And now you're telling me you gave me the job of cutting wasteful government spending, and then you're adding tons and tons of spending on top of that.
Yeah, but, the irony about all of this one is that in the whole government relationship between Musk and Trump, the one that kind of sticks to my memory is actually them talking. Trump, of course. There's one thing you say about Trump is always immaculately dressed, right? Never a tie out of place. He's always immaculate. And then you've got of course what's his name on the other Musk on the other hand, who's just kind of got a jacket on top of a t-shirt.
Well, each one is wearing the uniform of their generation, basically.
Yeah.
Trump is wearing the pretty much standard, usually red tie, but sometimes yellow tie.
He loves a red tie. And I'm not critical of what he wears. He's usually immaculately dressed. But
what I'm saying is that's the uniform. That's the uniform of a president. That's the uniform of the people that he leads. If you notice, quite often when he gets all his ministers in the same place, they all have the same color suit. Quite often they all have the same color tie, and they always have a white shirt. That's Rubio. That's
blue suit, navy blue suit, red tie. That's the Trump genre.
Yes, and you'll find that.
But the
all of his ministers will copycat him.
Yeah, the interesting thing is, I remember about this is them being in kind of in front of the top of the range Tesla sports car.
Yeah, so Elon gives Trump a Tesla, and Trump responds lately that maybe he'd drive an EV, maybe he'd drive a gas, maybe he'd drive a hybrid, that kind of thing. So anyway, this has been predicted early on. You have two gigantic egos, two gigantic narcissistic-like egos. So the press coins them, and they fall out. Now Trump is going to use Doge against Elon Musk and throw him out of the country, send him back to South Africa.
Yeah, use ICE against Elon Musk.
I wonder if South Africa could put a tariff on Elon when he comes back. And Bezos is another one that you get all these tech giants flattering Trump, heaving all kinds of money at him, obeying his pronouncements when Amazon tried to put the price of the tariff someone was paying for a good. So you bought a TV and you have the price of it, it's $1,000. This is the tax, is so much, and here's the tariff.
Yeah.
Trump freaked out, and Bezos collapsed and bowed. Okay, oh yes, buona, we'll take that off. We won't tell the consumer what kind of tariff they're paying. Why, I don't know. That should be
clear.
Know.
Yeah, it should be clear. Yeah. All right.
So we got a problem. We got a problem with a supreme leader and a supreme leader wannabe. The supreme leader wannabe is Musk, and he obviously thinks he's the smartest politician that's not a politician. And Trump, who thinks he's the supreme leader, God-placed leader of the free world. I don't know, man. It's tragic, but sometimes it's just hilarious.
Well, I'm going to go to another one here, which Chinese aircraft carriers been breaching U.S. defense line. There's a kind of line of islands in the western Pacific Ocean, whereby the U.S. has basically been laying out the rules to the Chinese about thou shalt not cross this line. And not only have they've breached one defense line, they've now breached a second defense line, as if they're kind of goading on the Americans. And the Americans have so far done nothing.
Well, they're busy, aren't they? Where are their aircraft carriers? They're in the Middle East, and this was warned upon too. Like, you take your big carriers and your fleet and you stick them in the Middle East because you think you're going to have problems there. You had to take them away from where? You had to take them away from the Pacific.
Yeah.
Right. So now that's wide open, and the Chinese have taken that opportunity to push the boundaries of U.S. influence there.
And even if the Chinese intend to do nothing, it's just possibly is likely just simply a show of force, and that's all they're intending to do here.
No, I think it's much deeper. The Chinese have always said that this is our sphere of influence, not yours. We haven't been able to enforce our sphere of influence since 1800 because we became victimized by the very powerful European powers.
Yeah, by the British, by the Portuguese, by the French, by the Americans, etc.
Yes,
and of course by the Japanese in the meanwhile.
Yes, and they still smart from that because of the opium wars and the amount of opium that was brought into the country by these great powers, Britain principally, but also the United States. But aside from that, they have their own version of the Monroe Doctrine, it appears. The United States declared the Monroe Doctrine in 1823, telling everybody, stay out of the Western Hemisphere. Do not mess with us or mess with the Western Hemisphere, or you'll have to mess with us.
Yeah.
And it was it was a clear, in those days, it was a clear message to the European powers: get out of the business of colonialization, get out of here, quit messing with our sphere of influence. We're the boss here now, not you. Yeah. And that's the Chinese said, this is our sphere of influence. And we weren't able to enforce our sphere of influence for 100 years, but now we're back, and Taiwan belongs to us. And these waters in and around us, that's ours. That's our Monroe Doctrine.
Yeah.
Right. It is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, absolutely.
We're now testing all the limits, and when they have a bigger navy than the United States.
They've got a Chinese naval task force, including a carrier, and I'm going to get this name wrong, Liaoning, right, and other vessels seen operating 186 miles southwest of Minamotorishima, Japan's easternmost territory.
Yeah, so they're poking around.
Yeah, poking around Japanese territory, which, of course, the Americans have been supporting for quite some time, since the Second World War, end of the Second World War.
Now, the big problem with the Americans is they've not been able to settle the Ukraine war, that thing that was supposed to be solved the first day Trump got in office. It has lingered, and Putin is playing Trump. And they haven't come close to solving the Gaza thing, which they said that would happen within weeks of Trump getting in office. So they've failed so far in those two things. And not only that, they picked the battle with the Iran, so that forced them to deploy their forces away from the Pacific, and the Chinese took advantage of that to show everybody, we're the new boss here. We're going to be the new boss, so get used to it.
Yeah.
Now, the states in its forever wars and its constant meddling in the middle of what. So basically, what the U.S. has to do is solve Ukraine, solve Gaza, get back to the Pacific, or they're going to lose. They cannot be in both places at once.
Yeah. Oh yeah. And again, you could maybe put the Atlantic fleet into the Middle East, but
they're spread out all over the place. It's very much like
Yeah.
the British Empire that got overextended. You know, one of the reasons why the British Empire lost the colonies was because they were overextended when they were fighting.
particularly as a result of the Second World War. Yeah.
Well, I mean, back in the Revolution times, the Revolutionary times, the Brits were fighting for the United States, but also three major powers. They were fighting the Spanish, the French, and the Dutch, all at the same time, as well as fighting the Americans, who used French troops and the French Navy. They didn't have a navy to speak of, so they used the French Navy. So what happened? Why? Because the Brits got overextended and they didn't have any allies. When they lost the American colonies, they had no allies. And right now, the U.S. is in getting precariously because it's offending all of its allies, all of its friends.
Oh yeah.
So you need, and right now it is irritating Japan to no end. Japan is essential to the security of the Pacific, and they're just irritating this crap out of the Japanese.
Yeah, why should we help them? You know, why should the Canadians help them? Why should the British help them? Why should the French help them? Kind of thing, you know, is what's going through a lot of people's minds right now, right?
Well, the fact is we want to help them, but they're pushing us away.
Yeah.
And,
I know. And that's
I mean, Trump's got another 3 years. I don't know how much damage he can do in that 3 years. But right now he's the supreme leader, and he's got a bunch of sycophants in the Republican Party that are terrified of him and will do his bidding. Because they fear the consequences. I think that the Republican Party would be very happy to get rid of Trump, but the problem is the heir apparent is J.D. Vance, and that hasn't gone unnoticed by Trump because apparently they're manufacturing the blame for this big beautiful bill. If it doesn't work, they're going to be able to dump the blame on Vance. So.
Yeah.
So it's a political minefield out there for the Republicans right now. But right now they just bow down. And if you talk to some of the Republicans that have revolted and have their own mind, like Thomas Massey and Tellis and a few of the others, and Rand Paul, they'll say that the Republicans will come up to them in private and congratulate them on their fortitude, but know that they can't do the same without suffering political consequences.
Yeah. All right. I think we can
the Supreme leader does not like it.
I think we can kind of leave it at that point.
Yes. Okay. Thanks, everyone, particularly Mike Cushman for his undying devotion to a cleaner environment here and around Niagara.
Yeah.
And he's got an infinite capacity to resist the resisting. Basically, he can tolerate endless amounts of frustration, and so hats off to him in a big way.
Yeah, absolutely.
Also, by the way, I'd just like to note the St. Catharines Junior A's played their last game last night and beat a very tough Oakville Buzz 10-7, but it was a back and forth contest right up till near the end. It was one team leading, the other team leading the whole way. Damn good lacrosse. And the Junior Bees are going to start their next round of playoffs. They unexpectedly took out the Cambridge Highlanders last week and went all the way to Cambridge to see the final game. So if you want some good lacrosse, keep an eye on what's going on. June 8th would be the first game in St. Catharines at the Brock Sports Complex.
July 8th, you mean?
July 8th will be the first game that's coming here. It'll be the second game overall, but the first one locally. And if you want to see a good, really good brand of lacrosse for junior Bs, they've got things very quite good together actually. Anyway, and the junior A's will begin their playoff series. So there's a lot of very good sports entertainment available. It only costs for seniors $5 to get in.
Oh, okay.
$10 for anyone else.
Yeah. Well, that's a good deal anyway, right? Okay.
Yeah.
So thanks everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And without further ado, I bid you adieu. Do not forget Gaza. That is a nightmare that continues. When Trump's